Hi guys, this is a quick look at the V3 ZAxis that has been released for a while now and has been incorporated into the main Fusion assembly. Before we get started, I just want to say thank you to everyone for the amount of support and what's actually been happening on the Discord, the amount of builds and the amount of effort that people put in is amazing, and it's really made the PrintnC become what it is now, which is a bit of a growing beast. We're seeing more builds released every day, so that's really exciting. All right, so cracking onto the V3, a little bit of back history. Originally, we had the V1, which was the original lead screw version without the increased Z. Then we moved to the 2.0, which was the increased Z version, still in a lead screw. Then we went to the 2.1, which was similar to what you can see here, but wider with a ball screw, and then Logan did some amazing work, narrowed it all up and released the narrow Z version. And now this is finally a sort of a unifying of everything, which brings the advantages of the narrow Z into the new version that you can see here. Now the major change, visually they look very similar to the narrow Z. The major change is it's much less parametric. It's designed to fit a number of different steel sizes, so we've checked it against everything from 75 by 50, which is obviously the standard, 3 by 2, 80 by 50, 80 by 60, and then the larger sizes as well, so the 100 by 50 and the 4 by 2. So they're the official, I'll say, sizes that are supported, and they're the ones that we've checked that everything will work on. Just brought up here the different parameters you can see. So if we have a look, we've got our steel sections, short, long, thick, radius, like we're used to everywhere. I've just opened this file, I'm hoping it doesn't cause many dramas, because this is the old one before it was incorporated in, but we will move on. But yeah, as you can see, there's not a huge deal of parameters in there. That's the main ones that you will need to set is your steel and your angle. And the way it works is not by changing the face plate, but by changing the printed parts to accommodate the different sizes. Okay, so let's move on. We will start removing some of these things. Let's get rid of the printed parts initially, and take the hardware out. And we will take that out and that out, leaving us with just a faceplate here. Okay, so what we've got is two types of faceplates are included in the file. We've got the milled plate, which is the faceplate, and then we've got the... I'm just going to dig down into this a little bit more. And then we've got the wood simple plate. Okay. Now the difference between the two is that the milled plate is designed for someone who has an existing CNC. So it's got pockets in there. It's got the it's got this large channel down the middle. There's and then there's also tramming features. So adjusting tilt, nod. We'll go through exactly how they work shortly. But it is a more complex part to make. So rather than trying to get people to make a wood plate with all those features in there, we've done a simplified version to make life easier. Okay, so let's just have a look at the wood plate quickly. The concept behind the wood plate is if you are bootstrapping your machine together, so you're planning on building it with hand tools, you can drill this out, you can print the template out. It doesn't need to be hugely accurate, and bolt it onto the machine, and that will get you moving. We've actually seen some, I can't remember the name from Discord, but seen some pretty fantastic results, even on wood plates, 4,000 mil a minute in aluminium. So, you know, your machine is still definitely functional. All right, so that's the idea of the wood plate. It's purely a temporary interim measure to get your machine working, and then it allows you to make the milled plate with the machine. You can see they overlay perfectly. Now, if you are going to build the wood plate, there is a couple of things to know about it. So if I have a look here in the printed parts, Not that one. You're just going to have to bear with me for a moment. Wood, simple plate, rail spacers. This is what we want. Those there. Okay, so these red bits, they're 4 separate pieces of plastic. They're just a spacer that's the right size. So if we have a look at them, they're 7mm. Why there's 4 there is it's designed to fit on an end of 3 print bed, which is, you know, the most common printer out there. So the print bed on the end of 3, if we had a look at the full length here, would be too big. So we've done 4 of them, and if I turn on the hardware again, you can see that the rails actually sit on top of those. All right, now what's interesting is if I turn on the milled plate, you'll see the milled plate actually sits in the same spot, but it doesn't need those spaces because of the way it's been designed with the channel. And also by recessing the BK block there. So how this works is if we turn off the milled plate, the BK block up the top here, that bolts directly into the wood. You'd probably use some nuts there rather than trying to bolt it in. So they're just M6 screws that go through. The rest of these here, these are all the 6mm, and they is that going to line up correctly? Well, base structure 2. That's just a mystery base structure. This file wasn't cleaned up before I sent it out, so forgive me if some of the things aren't lining up correctly. Yeah, all right. That plate's not in the correct spot, but essentially you just you bolt it directly onto there. We'll move away from the wood plate and move onto the milled plate, and if anyone has questions on the wood, they can ask me directly, and I'll come back to them on those. All right, moving on to here. All right, Mr. Milled plate. Now, starting at the top, we've got a cutout here, or a pocket, I should say, in CNC language, which puts the BK block. That is your BK block there. It recesses the BK block to align everything correctly. Now, the BK block is what is the load-bearing element of the entire thing. So it holds the weight of the spindle. It supports the ball screw. Now, it's been noticed on Discord that the nut that sits on the top of the BK block and holds the ball screw in there is not modelled in. So let me just see if it is. Yep, they're correct. All right, so there's supposed to be a nut on there. It comes with it when you buy a BK. I'll add that into the main assembly so it's less confusing for people, but if you're wondering why your Z-axis isn't holding itself up, it's because that nut is not there. That's how these ball screw systems work. That's, you know, per design, so we're doing the right thing there. Now let's just clear away that hardware again. And we are looking at the faceplate. So a quick run starting here. We've got these 3 holes. What these 3 holes are is they're for securing your tram bar. If we have a look at our tram bar down here, sorry, the middle ones are for your rails. So if we have turn the HGR rails on, those middle holes there are M5, and they're just your 4 screws holding your rails on. But these 2 either side can be a little bit confusing, the top and bottom one. What that's for is for this tram bar, as we'll call it, as I have called it. You can see here that there's 2 options if you bring up the tram bar. There's a 3x2, and if I turn off the 3x2 and turn on the 4x2, it moves up. Now, if I was to change the parameters here to use 100x50. All right, hi, I'm back. Okay, just had a small issue there where I forgot that this was still driven by the base parameters, which was a pain to work with, which we all knew. And also the other issue is my fan on my MacBook kicked in. The Big Sur upgrade has been, I like the OS, but it's pretty terrible on energy management at the moment. So my fan's been kicking in. So the last few minutes there of the first half of this video, you're going to hear that fan running, but hopefully it stays off now. So I apologise for the background noise there. Okay, so back to this tram block that we're talking about. You can see now that I've moved to a 100. Sorry, have I moved to a 100? Oh, this is just flatly not working. Oh no, sorry, I've just set the optional X. Okay, so that's a 100 by 50 X gantry, though the box section's still set to 75 by 50. So this is set up if you're using a larger span. So the crossover that we use is rule of thumb: if your X gantry ball screw is greater than 1500 millimeters, you're going to want to step up to 100 by 50 or 4 by 2 for your gantry. The way this image here is set up is currently, if you had it set up with the thicker gantry, but you've chosen to use a 75 by 50 or a 3 by 2 X roller on the top. So the spacing between here fits, but that is a smaller one. Okay, now, I tried to clear that up. You can see, back to talking about this tram block earlier, it's set for a 4 by 2, which means it's moved up to those 2 holes. If I was to have both on, you could see you've got 2 there, or if I was just to have the 3 by 2, you could see it wasn't going to meet it. Now I'll leave here comes the fans coming back on. I'm sorry, I did something on my laptop. Of course, that will send the fan into meltdown. Alright, so the way this works is it screws on the faceplate to the rear of it here into those M5 threaded holes that we've left on there. And then it just gives you these 2 adjustment screws. Now, if we swing around to the front here, you can see we've got this bolt here. That is your pivot point. So that works by having a bolt. If we turn on the hardware, let's just isolate the bolts for a sec. Turn on the milled plate. Oh, it's actually not even modelled in. Alright. That works by having a bolt in the box section itself. And that provides a spot for the faceplate to swing left and right. You then use your tram bar to make the fine adjustments to make that work. Alright, so this hole is larger here, so that's a 10.5 mil diameter hole. An M6 bolt has a 10 mil head, so there's just a little bit of play in there. It doesn't need to be perfect. It's literally just like a swing arm, almost like a hinge. All right, so that adjusts let's call it the tram in the X-axis. If we wanted to know how to do the Y-axis tram, we've got another bolt down here, which is this central bolt. Now this one can be a little bit confusing for people. The way it works is if I turn on the bolts again, I do know I modelled this one in because I did it about 10 minutes ago. You can see we've got 5 bolts down here. Let's just turn off these M5 so they disappear for a moment. M5, get rid of all of those. All right. Well, pop that into the wrong spot. That's not supposed to turn that. That bolt's an M6. Not sure why that's coming up in there. Let's just pop that into its correct home, which is the M6 by 12. Alright, now it should. Alright, now it's not disappearing. There we go. You can see these first 4 bolts here are the skewing bolts. Now they just hold it onto your angle. Now the old way we used to do the tramming was we used to tilt the plate, essentially put it up onto little legs. That's obviously not as secure as it could be, so we made some adjustments with how this works. So if we have a look at the bottom of the angle, these holes are oversized. They're supposed to be 7 mil, and they just allow the angle to move back and forth slightly. When you install the plate, you push your angle all the way up hard against the carriage so that the flange there is pushed against the carriage. So that the flange there is pushed against the angle. So that's got it in its most aft position, so you'll have a negative tilt to it. To tram it in the, what would we call that? That'd be the Y-plane, I guess. To tram it in the Y-plane, you then adjust this screw here, so this center bolt pushes in against the flange of the carriage. Just there, you can see there's an interference. It's not actually supposed to be like that. It wouldn't happen in real life. But as you push it in, it will push the faceplate out, adjusting that y-axis tilt. So you'd have your bolts on the bottom here. These are your M6 going up into your carriage. You'd have them firm so that they're holding position, but you wouldn't have them so firm that you're not able to adjust the tilt. So with those two there, those two options, we've got looking at the top, tram bar to adjust tilt and x-axis. A bottom bolt here to adjust tilt in the y-axis. All right, so that's getting us nice and close. Now I'm going to skip a little bit ahead just because we are talking about tramming now, and that's probably the main feature of this plate. And we're just going to move into how you can tram the spindle itself. So I'm just going to need to turn on all the hardware again. All right, there it comes, and turn that on, and we need to have a tram plate. Okay, and we need to turn our printed parts on. And there we go. All right. Now, tramming of the spindle itself. Okay, now this was Logan idea, which I was really impressed with. The way I did it originally was two separate plates. It worked, but definitely not as elegant as what we've done here. Okay, so if we turn off the... Just turn off the spindle bracket for a minute. You can have a look and see what's in here. Okay. These bolts here are for securing your mount plate, I guess you'd call it, onto the carriages. Okay, so if I turn the tram plate off, you can see there's just nothing there but the carriages. M6 going through, securing all those on. Now this center one here is for securing in the nut block, and same with those two up the top there. That's if you're using the milled type nut block. You can also print that block if you choose to. And then finally this hole here, this is an M5 bolt. Now if we bring up the hardware, I'm just realizing that when I did this, I thought the whole thing was fairly self-explanatory. But now as I'm going through it more, I realize it's probably not as self-explanatory as I thought. All right, you can see it's protruding there. The reason it protrudes is that you're going to modify your your spindle mount. All right, so if we have a look at the spindle and the spindle bracket, all right, you can see you've got your normal bolts for securing it in, all right? But if we have a look behind us, you're actually going to drill a hole, that's a 9mm hole for an 8.5 head diameter M5 bolt. You're going to drill that into the center of your cast spindle bracket. What that does is that provides the pivot point for adjusting the spindle itself in the the X plane. So how that works is if we bring up the tram plate and bring up our sorry about this, even I get confused now. Bring up the printed parts. Yeah, there we go. You can see we've got these bits here that are bolting onto your mounting plate. If we turn off the tram bar for a moment. We've got M5, I think, from memory. Yep, M5 are going through there, and then you've got the bolts that are screwing down to the bottom and pushing onto the spindle bracket. So they'll adjust the spindle itself in the X plane. Why that's important is you can have your rails perfectly perpendicular to the workpiece. You can have your everything set up correctly, but then your spindle itself may actually be on an angle. So if you visualize what would happen there, if you went to absurdism and said your spindle was on a 45-degree angle, but your plate was perfectly perpendicular, you can see it's going to cause trouble. So that's some more fine adjustment we've got there. And then I think that's it on that. That covers that off. We also have these smaller bolts here if you do choose to adjust it in the Y plane. They're sort of just to assist you with shimming, so you can push the spindle bracket out itself and then insert some shims down. But I think covering all those has pretty much got us everything we need. Alright, now let's just do a reveal all. We'll go back. This video is already getting a little bit longer than I was hoping for. But, you know, these things happen. Hopefully you bear with me. Just turn the printed parts on. Z mode amount rises. Okay. A couple little things here that are easy to overlook. I think most of that's fairly self-explanatory now from moving forward, but a couple of things here that are easy to overlook is, sorry about this, let's just clear that out. There's a integrated hole there if you wanted to mount a small switch in for your limit switch. Some people use inductors, some people use mechanical switches. I personally prefer just the mechanical switches, but you know, it's completely up to you. So if we turn that off, you can see that just goes up into there, and then there's a hole, allows you to run your wires through that way. The Z motor mount, it's really important that when you print this, that you print it face down. That's the way it's designed to be printed, and that's the way that keeps it strongest. So print it like that. I've seen some people print it in this orientation. It's really not what we want. That doesn't work quite as well. Where else are we? Let's turn that off. There's the riser here. This is the old style riser. I may remove this. And just move to the standard type, which uses a milled block or a printed. I'm just going to leave it in there for the moment. I'll make a decision on that fairly shortly. Assembly tools, they're all here. Again, they're mostly self-explanatory. Includes one here for your spindle bracket. It's quite a large tool. You can just print that out on a 2D printer, the old 2D prints on paper thing. I'm sure some of us have got one still, and just stick it onto the back of the spindle mount if you want, rather than making the big plastic piece. Otherwise, all of these here are now labelled with everything you need to help you on that. All right, let's remove that. Z motor mount, BKs. Let's unisolate all again. Now, it's a couple other little things to mention. It's not in this file because I've integrated into the main file. But if you look on the main file, there's a new option called X roller offset. Now, what that does is if you're using, for example, like we had it set up here with 100 by 50, your whole faceplate will actually move out by an extra inch. Look at me just mixing metric and imperial into the same sentence. That's brilliantly well done. All right. Because it moves out that extra inch, it increases your lever arm. Some people don't mind. Some people really want to get it moved back in towards the gantry. If you adjust your X roller offset, it will off-center the ball nut there and allow you to bring the whole faceplate back in line with where it would normally be. It's completely optional. It's not something many people use, but it's worth knowing that it's there. I'm just going to quickly run through here and make sure we haven't missed anything, and then we're going to wrap this up. Assembly tools there, Z, sensor, tram bars, we've covered off that, ball screws, we've covered off that. The hardware, mostly all modelled in now. Again, if you have any issues, contact me. I'm always happy to provide assistance. Ball screw nut. Oh, okay, this is what I was talking about earlier. This here is the ball screw nut block. What that is that's a standard 1204 nut block that's had the edges cut down. You could do that with a hacksaw, you could do it with a milled machine, or you can print the block. Any of those options will work fine. The preference is obviously that you end up with a metal block there, but that's how that one works. All right. let's just unisolate all again one more time. And I think we've covered off everything. I think that should be enough to get most people moving. So look, I just want to wrap it all up and again say thank you to everyone. It's fantastic. I'm available for any support if you need it. And yeah, I think we'll wrap it up there. Okay, thanks.